In the material world, everyone is a tapasya. Everyone is not austere. Everyone is performing austere. What the soul of the austerity is the desire, what they want. That is the difference between the two. So in the material world, the austerities people do is informed by desire for material things, bhukti mostly. So those desires are, not having a connection to the Lord. So they're not pleasing and they lead to samsara. But Daksha, even though his desire is for being empowered to sex life so he can increase the population, that is also the desire of the Lord, to increase the population. So the Lord says, I'm very pleased by your austerity, which is having this desire inside, because this is also my desire. We discussed yesterday why it would be the desire of the Lord to have people accept material bodies when material bodies are sources of misery. Doesn't that seem kind of cruel? Well, we discussed that yesterday. So last verse we were able to cover was the Lord is saying that this is not a low thing. This work of populating the world or the worlds, this is not a low thing. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, other progenitors like the Manus, all of them are doing this work. So this work is real. This is God's work. Not that you go and have sex here and there and say I'm doing God's work, but this is literally God's work on a universal level. So this is not a low activity, even though it may appear to be materialistic and so on. And so the Lord continues here, giving some further statements here, starting with verse number 46. So verse 46 and 47 speaks about the forms of worship, the forms of the Lord that are worshipped by persons on different paths. So verse 46 speaks about the form of worship of the karma yogis. The karma yogis worship the form of the Lord composed of the injunctions of the Shastras. So he says this here, my dear Brahmana, austerity in the form of meditation is my heart. Vedic knowledge in the form of hymns and mantra constitutes my body. And spiritual activities and ecstatic emotions are my actual form. The ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices, when properly conducted, are the various limbs of my body. The unseen good fortune proceeding from pious or spiritual activities constitutes my mind. And the demigods who execute my orders in various departments are my life and soul. Very interesting. Tapo me hridayam, austerity is my heart. Tanur vidya, knowledge is my body. So the vidya here refers to the various hymns and mantras that you'll find in the Vedic literatures. So the Lord is saying, this is my body. Kriya akritihi, my actual form is kriya. So the word kriya refers to the actions of the karma yogis, the various rituals that they perform in karma yoga. So he said, this is my form. Angani kratavo jata. Kratavo means the yagya. So this yagya, the various types of yagyas mentioned in Shastra, these are my limbs. Dharma atma. When you do the prescribed yagyas, they produce some result in the future. So this result is called as the apurva. I think they call it as the apurva. It is the unseen result of a particular ritual. So Krishna is saying that unseen result of the ritual, this is my atma, this is my mind. This is how it is translated in the commentaries. This is my mind. And the various devatas that are propitiated in worship, asava suraha. Sura means the demigods. Many times the demigods are the, at least the indirect objects of worship in the Vedic rituals. They appear superficially to be aimed at Indra or Varuna Dev, etc. So he says these suras, they're actually my life heirs. So in this way, this is considered to be a form of the Lord for the karma yogis. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, when Krishna is speaking about yagya specifically, and how yagya makes the world go round, he makes the point that the imperishable God, Akshara, he just used the word Akshara. The word Akshara means imperishable. But in context, it can refer to the soul who's imperishable. It can refer to God. In any case, he says the Akshara is the source of the Vedas. And he says from the Vedas comes the dharmas for humankind. And from the dharmas, there's prescribed yagyas that are to be performed, which then produces the rain. From the rain comes the foodstuffs, and from the foodstuffs comes the humans who can then perform the dharmas and the yagyas in that way. The yagya is what's making the world circle around. And then Krishna says, therefore, the Akshara is located or found in the acts of yagya. I think yagya karma, Samba verse, I forget the Sanskrit, we could look up the verse. He says the Akshara, the transcendence, is in the acts of yagya that are performed by the karmis or karma yogis, either one, both. God is there in those acts of yagya. That's what makes them work because of God's presence. So the various aspects of the yagya and on the path of karma, that is also a form of God. That is a form of God worshipped by the karmis and the karma yogis. They are connecting to God in that particular way. Next verse. Now he speaks about the form worshipped by the devotees and then the form worshipped by the gyanis. First, the form worshipped by the devotees. Aham evasam evagre na anya kinchantarambahi. Before this, the creation of this cosmic manifestation, I alone existed with my specific spiritual potencies. Yeah, this is the translation of the first line. So aham evasam evagre. So previously, at the beginning, I existed. That means before creation, I existed. After the destruction of the universe, I will exist. And while the universe is going on, it is only I that is existing. So this verse very much echoes the Chatur Shloki verses. Aham, so Prabhupada is taking this word aham means I, because the Lord is actually talking to Daksha. He's right in front of him. So he's saying, before the creation, I existed. So that means before there was nature, I exist. So whatever you're seeing is, again, a transcendental form, a supernatural form. It's not a nature form. And after the destruction of the universe, I exist. So my form is not Maya. And my form is inconceivable. Na anya kinchantarambehi. After the creation, there is nothing else that exists but me. So that means that this world, which is an effect, of course, of God's potency, is also him. He's saying that nothing else here but me, actually. The me is not the me in terms of my energy, but actually the me that's talking to you. So my form is inconceivable and also all-pervading. So before creation, I existed. After the destruction of the universe, I exist. And whatever you see manifest, that is also me. That's what he's saying. My form is transcendental. Prabhupada and Sri Vishwanath quote, of course, they would quote this verses from Damodar Lila. When Mother Yasoda was trying to bind Krishna's body. So this verse comes up, 13-14, 10th canto, chapter 9, explaining why she was unsuccessful. So here the point being mentioned is that because God has no starting point, no end point, and no inside and outside. So if you have to wrap a rope around someone, they have to start somewhere, right? And then end somewhere. Otherwise, how do you wrap around them? They have to have an inside and outside. And you have to be able to stretch the rope around the outside of the thing. But God has no outside. So where you will wrap the rope, it has no inside. It's very mysterious also because the Lord also had ankle bells on. So in order for the ankle bells, you have to wrap it around his foot, right? So the ankle bells were wrapped, but somehow the bigger rope was not wrapped. So this is the Lord's Achintya Shakti, his mystic potency, his inconceivable power. So the idea here is that the form of God is inconceivable. So then the question comes, if this is the case, how is it that the Mother Yasoda would even attempt to bind him? Because, so that is answered in the second verse. Tam Matyajam Avyaktam, you can see it here. Martya Lingam Adokshajam. Because he has a Martya Lingam, he has a form that looks like a human. So therefore she was thinking that I could bind him, I could punish him. But actually, although he has a form that looks like a human, and Matva Atmajam, due to her natural motherly affection, this is called Vatsalya Prema here, she was thinking like this. The truth of the matter is that the Lord's form is avyaktam or adokshaja. Adokshaja means beyond the purview of the senses. Adya akshaja gyan. Akshaja gyan, akshaja means the akshaja gyan means the knowledge born of one's senses. It's called akshaja gyan. And adya means below. So the Lord is called as adokshaja, which means one who keeps akshaja gyan below him or beneath him. That is the meaning of the word adokshaja. So even if you see him with your eyes, your akshaja gyan is kept below him. So that means you see him, you actually don't see him. You're seeing but not seeing. You don't know what you're seeing if you see him, because your senses only have, they can only reach the sense objects, but you're not looking at a sense object anymore. You're looking at a transcendental entity. So in one sense, you don't even know what you're looking at actually. So his form is inconceivable. This is the idea. So Narayana, who is speaking to Daksha, is saying similar thing. That before creation, I, in the form that is in front of you, existed. So I'm not a form of nature. After destruction, I was there. It actually, everything that exists, actually there's nothing else that exists but me. My form is inconceivable. So this form is the object of worship for the bhaktas. This next line, samjnana matram avyaktam, this was referring to the impersonal feature of God, which is just samjnana matram, which means exclusively consciousness. It is just consciousness itself without any form. That consciousness is avyaktam. Avyaktam means unmanifest to the senses. Prasuptam eva. It is just like, prasupti is like sleeping. When you're, I don't know, this, how does Prabhupada translate this? Just as one's consciousness is unmanifested during the time of deep sleep. The time of sleep. Yeah, I don't know, this prasuptam eva is like sleep. I think it's because the experience of Brahman is often compared to deep sleep, where you have awareness only of consciousness itself, but not consciousness with any object, right? Usually you're conscious of some content, of form, emotions, et cetera, there's content that you're aware of. But in deep sleep, you're not aware of anything except for yourself in that experience. But that awareness of yourself is also without any content, right? In deep sleep. That's why deep sleep, or if you get the, what do you call it? REM sleep? I guess REM sleep, I don't know these terms, but if you get the anesthesia, so they can do all sorts of things to the body you're not aware of. You're not really even aware, you're aware of only yourself in that state, but you're not aware of the self with any content. So the self with content is actually the false ego. So that self is what we're usually preoccupied with. But now there's a suspension of the false ego in the state of deep sleep. It's very much like samadhi. So there's a suspension of the senses, the mind, the false ego. And so you're aware of yourself without any content. So Brahman is something like this. It's like awareness without any content. Samjnana matram, it is just awareness itself, but without any connection with content. And so this is the form that is appreciated by the followers of Gyan. So Krishna is giving a little bit of some ontology here about himself in these two verses. So next verse, now he talks more specifically about the work that Daksha wants to do. So he says, I'm the reservoir of unlimited potency, and therefore I am known as unlimited or all-pervading. Mai ananta gune anante, that's the first line. From my material energy, the cosmic manifestation appeared within me. Gunato guna vigraha. And in this universal manifestation appeared the chief being, Lord Brahma, who is your source and is not born of a material mother. So he's giving the history of the creation there, very straightforward. Next verse. When the chief Lord of the universe, Lord Brahma, Swayambhu, having been inspired by my energy, was attempting to create, he thought himself incapable. Therefore, I gave him advice, and in accordance with my instructions, he underwent extremely difficult austerities. Because of these austerities, the great Lord Brahma was able to create 9 personalities, including you, to help him in the functions of creation. Prabhupada's short purport here is about the importance of tapasya, because he's appreciating Daksha's tapasya. So without tapasya, nothing can be accomplished. Tapasya, if you do it, turns into what is called as the tejas. Tejas is the potency to accomplish things or to perform extraordinary things. So without tapasya, you cannot get anything. So Prabhupada, of course, quotes this verse, Tapo divyam putra kanyena sattvam, that if you do the divine tapasya, by which your self is purified, then you can achieve spiritual realization. In any case, Brahma has done I don't want to call it the material tapasya, but he's done tapasya as ordered by the Lord. And therefore he got the power to do the work of creation. So Daksha has also done this, and the Lord is appreciating this. All right, next verse. So, oh my dear son Daksha, Prajapati, Panchajana has a daughter named Asikni, whom I offer to you so that you may accept her as your wife. Now unite in sexual life as a man and woman. And in this way, by sexual intercourse, you will be able to beget hundreds of children in the womb of this girl to increase the population. So now he's giving him empowerment to do his sex life work for increasing the population. Straightforward. Sri Vishwanath and Prabhupada give interesting purport here. They put a question before us. He's just had darshan of the Lord. It's a very extraordinary thing to have darshan of the Lord. He also experienced some sort of bliss from that. So much so that he was choked up, he was not able to speak anything. So he's experienced some happiness from this. So the question is here, why is the Lord placing him on the path of karma? Because it's still sex, although this desire of Daksha for doing the sex life to have population, Lord has already said, this is also my desire, because the devotees need bodies to perform sadhana, and we gave that explanation yesterday. But it's still the path of karma. But it's connected to the Lord, but it's still the path of karma. But now he's having darshan of the Lord. So by the higher taste, you should give up the lower taste or attraction to it, right? So how is it that he's throwing daksha on the path of karma even after having darshan? So Sri Vishwanath puts this question on the table. And then he answers the question by saying that this is due to the result of his offenses. So in the previous Manvantara, he committed offense to Lord Shiva, right? As a result of his offense, he lost his head, literally, got a goat's head. A little bit humiliated by that, so he gave up that body. Now, so many Manvantaras later, he's taking birth again. But the influence of the aparad has also come with him. And so due to the influence of the aparad, even though he's having darshan of the Lord, he's also experiencing some happiness from the Lord. He can't shake the offenses. They're very hard to shake, particularly if nam-aparad, offenses to the Lord and offenses to his devotee, very hard to shake. So you know this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, how does it? Nashya Prayesh Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? We called our WhatsApp group Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? What does Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya mean? It means daily you should do Bhagavat Seva. Daily, you should do Bhagavat Seva. There are 2 types of Bhagavats, the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata, right? So you should do book Bhagavata by Seva, by hearing the book Bhagavata. And you should do person Bhagavata Seva by hearing from him also. And also there are other practical services you can do for the devotee. So it says by this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, then what happens? Nasha Prayeshu Abhadreshu. Almost all the offenses are destroyed. Abhadreshu means Abhadreshu means inauspicious things, anarthas. But it says almost all the anarthas are destroyed if you do Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So the devotees will ask, what is the almost? Why not complete? What is the almost part? So Sri Vishwanath has told us, if you recall from Madhurya Kandambini, he's also told us that the almost, or why it's not all the Bhadras, only almost all of them. And he says because the ones from offenses are long-standing. You do the aparad. So anartha is like attraction to matter, attraction to sin and piety. Anarthas that come from bhakti, these things will be destroyed very easily by Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. But the anarthas that come from offenses, they can last all the way up to Sadhya Bhakti Bhav. So it seems here that Daksha couldn't shake that, so to speak. You can't really shake it. You have to, only way you can get rid of the anartha that comes from aparad is that you have to suffer it. That's basically the only way you can get free of it. You have to suffer it, or some powerful grace has to relieve you of that. Otherwise, not possible. So Daksha was not able to free himself from this aparad. And therefore, the Lord put him on the path of karma, even after giving his darshan. And he said, now you're going to enjoy. Do the sex life, produce the children. But you'll not be able to give up the path of karma and embrace bhakti because of this offense. So a question comes up, well, what about Kashyapa Muni? So Kashyapa Muni, he also saw the Lord and he had desire for a wife so he could produce the children. He's also a Prajapati. So very similar to Daksha. He prayed to the Lord. He did like austerities for 10,000 years, I think. Got darshan the Lord. He also was praying for a wife. But he prayed for a wife with a little bit of embarrassment. If you're going to see his prayers, I should have pulled it up. But let me see if I can find it. There's one very funny prayer of Kashyapa Muni when he's praying to the Supreme Lord. He's a little embarrassed that he's praying to the Lord for a wife so he can produce children. As you can imagine, you're seeing this great thing that's not a thing itself. It's consciousness personified in the highest order. It's, the form of God. And you're asking for a low thing. It's very embarrassing. Like Dhruva Maharaj is telling this also. I think it's in this chapter. He says, I've asked for broken pieces of glass when I'm looking at a diamond. So the devotees are a little bit embarrassed about this. Yeah, this one. So Kashyapa Muni offers his prayer. This is a very nice prayer. He says, persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs, and who have taken shelter of the umbrella of your lotus feet by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities and activities and discussions with one another, can be free from the primary necessities of the material body. So he's saying this in context as a criticism of himself. Because what is the stereotype worldly affair? Getting married and having children. So he said there's a stereotype worldly affair and the beastly followers of these affairs. But he's like self-criticizing because he's asking for this thing only from the Supreme Lord. So someone may say, well, Kashyapa Muni is also being thrown on the path of karma. He's also a progenitor. He's having darshan the Lord. He's also doing path of karma. But you can see here from these prayers, Kashyapa Muni is criticizing himself. And he also doesn't stick with it. He produces children and produces Kapila, then he renounces. Even right after Kapila is born, he just leaves. So he did the matter thing for a short time and again embraced bhakti. But that is not seen in Daksha. Daksha did not embrace bhakti, nor did he pray he doesn't really want bhakti. So this is due to aparad. So one has to be careful about this. The Gaudiyas, they say there's a difference between sin and aparad. Sin is never considered an issue in bhakti, although our communities today, we tend to make a lot of the sin, because for social intercourse, sin is problematic. If people are not following certain moral protocol and so on, they're being sinful, then it makes it hard for proper social intercourse. So therefore, in communities, they put a lot of emphasis. If you do the sin, how can you get God's mercy? And they speak like this. But actually, from the Bhagavatam, sin is not considered like a huge deal. A huge deal means they don't make much of it. If you're a bhakta, in the true sense, you will not be attracted to sin or piety. If you're attracted to a piety, you're probably also attracted to sin, because that is duality is like this. You don't really get one without the other. So if you see the devotees, they go on their social media, sharing all the pious statements, that are very attractive. How to fix your relationship with your partner in 3 easy steps and whatever, all these pious things they're attracted to. I mean, they're probably attracted to sin also. But that they won't put in the public for obvious reasons. So, but the devotee is not attracted to sin or piety. Even though that is the case, sometimes it may be saying the devotee gets entangled in something sinful or pious, even as it were. But bhakti can destroy that very easily. So the Bhagavatam doesn't really, you don't see in the Bhagavatam a big deal made out of sin. So the sin is compared to dust. Forget the technical name is used. But if dust is even accumulating for 20 years, you can easily wipe it away. Not very difficult. But the aparata is compared to a thunderbolt. And so if a thunderbolt strikes a mountain, it will leave a scar for a long time. And it'll be very hard to remove that also. So offenses like this. So in the culture of Krishna Bhakti, the only, our work in Krishna Bhakti is not so much to avoid sin. The devotees spend a lot of time, how you say, feeling guilty. Oh, I did this thing, I did that thing. And there should be some repentance. If you are a good soul, a good bhakti, there's some repentance there because performance of sin is not congruent with your core desire of attaining the Lord. So there's verses there I like to quote all the time. Jata Shraddha Makatasu Nirvina Sarvakarmasu. This is describing the life of a beginning devotee. He's awake in faith in God. Makatasu means Krishna Kata. He's awake in faith in that. He's disgusted with all material activity. That means sin and piety, all of it. And he knows it leads to suffering, but he still can't give it up. Because a very powerful daiva, he's not in control. Very powerful daiva is there forcing his hand sometimes. Just like if you go to Himalaya or Rishikesh, and the devotees like to take people to Rishikesh. I don't know why it's not, in my view, it's not proper, but whatever. Take them to Vrindavan, take them to Maya for Jagannath Puri. There's Chitta Prayas is considered as sort of a narta also. Anyway, but you're bringing like this group, first time and then you want to give them an experience. So they take them to Rishikesh and Ganga there flows very powerfully. So when you have to get in the Ganga, you have to hold on to the chain. Otherwise you'll be in the Bay of Bengal or whatever it leads to, you'll be washed away. So Daiva is like that current of Ganga at the Gangotri. It very forces your hand. You can't help it. And so you do some nonsense or you do some piety also. Helplessly you're doing it. Very helplessly. Prityage api anishvara. Anishvara means the devotee is not in control. So he helplessly is moved by his Daiva. And he does some nonsense. So how should he feel about this? So then Krishna says, my devotees should remain happy. Tato bhajata mam prita. He should remain happy and continue to do my bhajan with faith and determination. And even though he's sometimes doing sense gratification, he sincerely repents. Like Sri Vishwanath says, it means that while he's doing sense gratification, he criticizes it. So it's not like he's like, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy. He's like, this my situation is like this. He's lamenting, he criticizes it. So this is a good devotee will repent from his sinful life. But you won't see devotees as a culture putting all emphasis on like how to avoid sin, how to live the socially pious religious life. That is not an important thing to focus on in the culture of bhakti. If you have to focus on something, it's how to avoid this offense, this aparat. So Thakur Bhakti, in his book, Harinam Chintamani, you know Harinam Chintamani? Harinam Chintamani is one of the last books that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote when he was doing his Nirjan Bhajan, when he really renounced everything and was just staying in one place and chanting Harinam. So one of his final manuals was Harinam Chintamani. It's presented as a conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. And the book is largely a discussion on the 10 offenses. And the last part of the book is esoteric, the different stages to cultivate the Siddha Deha, the spiritual body meant for participating in Krishna's pastimes. That's the last chapter of the book. So anyway, most of the book is dealing with offenses. So Thakur Bhaktivinoda, he writes there that if you don't discuss the offenses, you will commit them. So if there isn't a culture of discussing aparat, then you'll commit. So that's why you see a rich culture of aparat in a lot of our communities today, because No one thinks about it so much, but this is the only obstacle in bhakti. Sin is not considered as obstacle. It is aparad. Now, if sin is very powerful in your life, that might be indicative of some aparad that has been done. So you can't resist any sense objects. You're just like fully absorbed in it. Your bhakti slackens. There are 5 effects of aparad. So it's unfortunate, Daksha, and you'll see it's for this reason, even though Daksha is a devotee, you'll notice that no one ever names his disciple Daksha. No one ever receives his name, even though he is also a bhakta. There are devotees who are named Ajamila. There are many devotees who are named Ajamila, but there's no one who is named as Daksha. It's kind of interesting if you think about it. I know at least one Ajamila devotee named Ajamila. Even though Ajamila lived such a sinful life, he wasn't an operati. And so people will give the name Ajamila. But no one will give the name Daksha, even though he is also a bhakta. Why is that? Because he does aparad. And as a result of his aparad, he is not able to embrace the path of bhakti. So he's having darshan of the Lord. There's some happiness from that. But he's on the path of karma, which he embraces. And after this, it will be seen that he will again commit offense, now to Narada Muni. So this is the effect of the offense also according to our commentators here. So you'll see the next chapter, he's just been given one wife from the Lord. So they'll produce many children. First set, Haryashvas, 10,000. Second set, Shalaya, I forget the second set, the name of the second set. Yeah, they all become brahmacharis because Narada preaches to them. So he preaches to the first 10,000 set, he gives some riddle. They have good intelligence, they understand the riddle, they become brahmacharis, they renounce the world. And then second set, so Daksha was very upset about it, but he tolerated it. He has a second set of kids, 1,000. Shalaya, I forget the name of the second set of kids. They go, he sends them to the same place. Narada Muni again comes, so you should follow the path of your previous brothers. So they also follow. So then Narada Muni Daksha commits aparad to Narada Muni. He becomes very angry, calls him all sorts of names and everything, commits aparad again. And so for this reason, Daksha's aparadi, no one is given the name Daksha. But people will name their disciple Ajamil also, but not Daksha. That was an interesting purport there. Of course, Prabhupada talks, because this verse is talking about the sex life between man and woman for producing children. So Prabhupada gives that this is dharma, which is not contrary to religious principles. You should have sex for children. Of course, that is the culture for brahmanas. So Daksha is a brahmana also. The progenitors are brahmanas. So are all of them brahmanas? Yeah, I think all the progenitors are brahmanas because they come from Lord Brahma. So they're all brahmanas. So this is the standard of sex life for the Brahminical community, that they do the sex life for producing the children. For the lower communities like Kshatriyas, they don't have sex lives for producing children. That's not possible for them, for the work that they're doing. And the Shudras, that's also not possible for them because they're Shudras. But to speak of the people outside of Varnashram culture. So Prabhupada, of course, went in a society of Brahmanas. So he always tells this particular standard as is appropriate. And he mentions that as just a practical point, if there's too much sex life, then there cannot be spiritual life. The two don't, they're not exactly compatible. Although, at least for the Bhagavatam culture. So he speaks to that point. All right, the last verses of the chapter, we're just going to read them. After you give birth to many hundreds and thousands of children, they will also be captivated by my illusory energy and will engage, like you, in sexual intercourse. So the population problem will be solved very easily. You'll produce a lot of children, they will also do sex life because they're in Maya. So they're attracted to that thing, and they'll produce a lot of children. And that way the population problem is solved. But because of my mercy to you and them, they will also be able to give me presentations of devotion. So they follow some culture. Shukadev Goswami continued, after the creator of the entire universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, has spoken in this way in the presence of Prajapati Daksha, he immediately disappeared as if he were an object experienced in a dream. And that's the end of the chapter. So we'll hear about what happens next to Daksha. Remember, this whole story is told because Daksha, one of Daksha's children, from his daughters. So there's the first two sets of sons. He curses Narada Muni. Then finally he has a set of daughters. And Narada Muni is going to preach to them. And then he gets them married off. And one of his daughters has the son named Twashta. And Twashta has a son named Vishwarupa. And Vishwarupa is the son of Twashta that is killed by Indra. And this story is being told for the Poshana of Indra. Remember the sixth canto, the topic of the major topic of the sixth canto is Poshana. The word Poshana literally means like nourishment, and how the Lord is nourishing and protecting his devotees in this material world who are struggling. So there are three major stories for the sixth canto: Ajamil story, which we've studied, and then there's Indra's story, and that's what we're hearing now. So this whole backstory is to set up Indra, how he does this horrible thing, killing his guru, and how the Lord still gives protection to even Indra. And then the next story will be Chitraketu and Vitrasura's story. So in this way, how the Lord is protecting his devotees in this world who are struggling in matter. That is the thing. So there's all backstories to bring up the story of Indra and how he killed his guru. So this is the context for the story here. Okay, we'll stop here. Is it possible for the Lord to give darshan? Or I should ask other way, because the Lord is Swarat. Can an offensive person see the Lord face to face, such as Daksha? How do we understand that? Anyone can see the Lord face to face by the Lord's mercy and inconceivable Shakti. But if you see the Lord without prema, it is like seeing but not seeing, right? So that's why Gaudiyas, we say like this, that the goal of Krishna consciousness is not darshan Lord, not simply darshan. To have darshan the Lord with prema, that darshan is you have access to the Lord in truth. Otherwise, we just quoted the verse also, right? Otherwise, the Lord's form is adokshaja, right? He keeps the akshaja jnana beneath him. So our senses are only able to gather the material information. So even if Krishna appears before us by his achintya shakti, what we're seeing is not God in a sense, because our senses are not able to reach to that transcendence. They have to be transmuted or imbued with prema in order to have real darshan of the Lord. So that is why the goal of Krishna consciousness is said prema, not darshan. So many people have darshan of Krishna. All the demons killed by him, they had darshan. Kamsa had darshan. Agasura had darshan. Many demons have darshan of Krishna by his achintya shakti. But do they really have darshan? Pashana pina pashati. They see, but they do not see because they don't have prema. So only the love gives access to the transcendental form of the Lord, not otherwise. But you can see it. Avajananti mamuda manushantanamastrita. But you will deride it. Just like the deity form is also Krishna. But what do you see? What do I see? We see some lifeless marble or something. If we're in the lowest state of consciousness, Jada Maya, our consciousness filled with the dullness, we say, oh, the Lord is just a statue. If you're on the Madhyam level, then you can be aware that the Lord is hearing you. You don't believe he's just statue, but you don't realize that is the Lord in full. Whereas the Uttam Bhagavat sees in the deity, you see, oh, this is my Lord, only is manifested here. Mahaprabhu would see Jagannath in the temple, he would see Shyam Sundar immediately. He would faint, go into a swoon of ecstasy. There's so many beautiful stories if you read, like there's this one book called Experiences in Bhakti. They share a lot of stories of bhaktas in the Braja area, just, bhaktas that no one would know about ever. They're not like a charge or something, but very pure devotees. And there's so many beautiful stories of how the deities reciprocating with these bhaktas in very mystical and extraordinary ways. So they have darshan of the deity because they have love. Whereas the rest of us, we see something, but do we see the Lord? No, we don't. I don't know. So seeing is not everything. You have to get the love. Seeing with the love is everything. Without prema, life is useless. Yeah. Makuna says, nice point about how one who is attracted to pious acts is also necessarily involved in sin. Yeah, that's just the funny thing about the dualistic world. There's like people in the dualistic world, we want the happiness part, but we don't want the stress part. But they come together like brother and sister. I told this story the other day, like this. They come together. So if you like the pious life, you'll also be attracted to sin. So you'll see, like historically speaking, also, for example, in the historical West, the puritanical Christian world, they were so hard on like the pious life. They were doing the worst sins also, because even that piety like transforms into sin. If you don't follow this thing to the T, then they will persecute you and kill you also. So that's how it goes. That's what the material world is funny like that. It's the dualistic world. So if you emphasize heavy piety, so then you'll see these persons also get caught up in the sin the most. That's why better not to become like a priest or sannyasi. Just be a normal person. That way, if you get caught with the cookies, everyone's like, yeah, yeah. If you're a priest or you preach from the podium, this thing, that thing, you very heavy at everyone. That is okay. If you're on the transcendental platform, you might be able to get away with that. If you're a normal conditioned soul, then you're just dualistic. So then they get caught on the other side also. It's very rare that such people have not like done something crazy. I was talking about this with some devotee in Braj. I said one of the really amazing things about Prabhupada's Leela is that there's no scandal surrounding him. Like with him, now people say he was poisonous. That's another thing that's around. But around his own persona, there is no scandal whatsoever. So many of these big gurus, like Patabi Joyce, recently it came out that he was doing all sorts of crazy things. Iyengar, Bikram, Kripalu, all these big guys, they have big ashrams all over India, all over the world. Osho is, that was a no-brainer there. All these guys, they get caught in doing crazy things. But there's nothing like that in Prabhupada, nothing. No complaint from any of his disciples that he was anything more than like loving and affectionate, at least in total perfect integrity, at the very least. So that is only possible if you're transcendental. But if you're just a pious person, then you'll also be into the sin. It's inevitable. Shamsaki says, like, Duryodhana was able to see Krishna, and so was Shishupal. Yeah, so many people saw Krishna, but they did not see. So therefore, we need prema. Okay. Any final comments anyone wants to share? We'll stop here for today. Okay, we'll continue the story tomorrow. It becomes very interesting. Sham Gopi says, one of our Western friends went to Osho for awakening, and they asked her for an HIV test. Oh my God. We asked her, did your bulb lit up? Oh my God. This material world is so out of control. Yeah, this one, the Kripalu, apparently after he left his body, it was coming out that so many disciples, women disciples, they were saying how, he would come to give the touch of praying. I was like, how could you be so naive to like believe that? But it's a thing. Becoming a charismatic person is an extremely dangerous thing. So there's also one of the anarthas that can come from bhakti also, right? That you become charismatic, people become attracted to you. So you like that part. So for this reason, your bhajan is unsteady. So our ISKCON has more than enough history around that. These devotees became genuinely powerful. They were doing very powerful bhakti when Prabhupada was here. They became genuinely powerful, but they couldn't get out of the anartha that comes from bhakti. And that later on led to a lot of complications, sinful life and so on. So, Hare Krishna. Okay. Yeah, we're finished. Hariom Tala, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Pranandi, Haribo, Haribo, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Have a good day.